When I was a young spry whippersnapper, I watched one of my favorite anime, The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. The premise of the show combined multiple occult ideas like time travel, psychic abilities, and aliens. Also, God was a 15-year-old girl. It made me laugh, cry, and, well, we don't need to get to the third thing. Its sequel movie, The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, I still regard as one of the best anime movies ever made, but that's perhaps a different video for a different day. I only bring it up because for years now, I've not encountered a series that quite hits the idea of clashing occult circles in a way that's as fun and interesting. That is until the release of today's subject, DanDaDan by Yukinobu Tatsu. After being serialized in 2021 with Shonen Jump Plus, DanDaDan started getting a lot of traction due to not only its wacky characters and storytelling, many have noted that its art style offers an attention to detail that is not present in many of the works of its same caliber. The series has received praise for the expressiveness of its characters and the realistic amount of detail put into its backgrounds. These are strong accolades, especially considering that this is the first work by mangaka Yukinobu Tatsu to be published. The story of DanDaDan follows high school students Momo Ayase and Ken Takakura, aka Okarun. Two teenagers that come from very different social standings from within their school. Ayase, despite coming from a family who lives on a shrine and is knowledgeable about ghosts and yokai, she is stylish and popular with other students. Okarun, on the other hand, is a reserved otaku obsessed with aliens and is often bullied because of it. The pair meet when they discover each other's fascinations with different occult interests. After a bet gone horribly wrong, the two of them discovered that ghosts and aliens are both in fact real, and they are forced to embark on a quest to recover what is most precious to a man. But instead of reviewing the series as a whole, I want to talk more about the creator. Who is Yukinobu Tatsu, and what inspired him to create DanDaDan? Like many aspiring mangakas, Tatsu made his start as a mangaka's assistant, someone who will help the artist by adding in details like motion lines and inking in areas like hair or shadows. Or in some cases, adding in entire backgrounds to panels. In Tatsu's case, he worked as an assistant under Tatsuki Fujimoto, known mainly for creating Fire Punch and Chainsaw Man. Tatsu worked with Fujimoto during the duration of Fire Punch's run and would stay for the first part of Chainsaw Man's creation as well. In this time, other would-be popular mangakas also worked with Fujimoto, Tatsuya Endo, the creator of Spy Family, and Yuji Kaku, the creator of Hell's Paradise. In fact, while still working with Fujimoto, Tatsu would also find further work as Kaku's assistant, after Kaku had left Fujimoto to start Hell's Paradise. During his time as an assistant, Tatsu is praised for his incredible attention to detail when drawing background scenes, as well as character expressions. Though it's a bit subtle, Tatsu believes that providing extra care in these areas provide a much more realistic feel to the work as a whole. I try not to make the screens look fake. I value the realism of the work and try to make sure that the characters do not do or say such and such. I think that even a single false background can reduce the reality of the work, so I try to pay as much attention to the background and props as possible. Being a fan of both Berserk and Akira, Tatsu praised both properties for their complex art styles, particularly with Berserk. Tatsu has expressed that despite being a fantasy series, it has so many lifelike qualities in both the world as well as how the characters communicate with each other. In a past interview, he would even go as far as to say that he thinks that it deserves a Nobel Prize. The inspiration gathered from these series is the reason why Tatsu has chosen to put so much effort in the minutiae of his own art. Now, of course, Tatsu wasn't in the game to be an incredibly talented assistant. Just like his co-assistants Kaku and Endo, Tatsu is working hard to get his own ideas serialized. But in his case, this was proving to be a lot more of a struggle. He would write and submit a number of projects based on popular shonen themes like giant robots, monsters, etc., but they would all get rejected. Shonen Jump Plus editor Shihei Lin, who was a fan of some of the ideas, would try to help by giving advice on how to fix some of the submissions, an effort to make the projects more of what the publications was looking for, but to no avail. I think there are a huge number of projects that have been rejected. I've fixed some of them several times and kept posting them, Beastman projects, robot projects, and Kyanchi projects, but none of these started out as serial. During the summer of 2019, Tatsu had submitted a project about Chinese jiangxi, only for it to also be turned down. This rejection would be a boiling point for Tatsu. After trying and failing many times, Tatsu would express in frustration, "Why won't they understand?" before he would consider giving up on being a manga artist entirely. Later, at an end-of-the-year drinking party held at Fujimoto's, Tatsu would tell Shihei Lin that, "I can't draw manga anymore," expressing his desire to give up and just stop trying entirely. Lin, who still saw a great amount of potential in Tatsu, would offer him one more bit of advice. Lin would suggest to draw freely without thinking, meaning not to worry about chasing a popular trend just to make what feels right to you. Tatsu-sensei put everything he had into a project about jiangxi, and it turned out to be a really interesting manga, but still, it didn't get approved for serialization, so the thread just snapped. So at a drinking party at the end of the year, I said, "Tatsu-sensei, something like, why don't you just try drawing freely without thinking about anything?" With that advice in mind, Tatsu came up with DanDaDan, a meaningless word, or at least meaningless to everyone not living inside of Tatsu's head, but this word would seemingly become a mantra for Tatsu, to draw whatever he wanted without thinking about approval, serialization, or even a specific genre. Before starting his new idea, Tatsu looked through a notebook full of log lines he had scribbled down. For those unaware, a log line is basically a brief summary of a story idea, usually only a single sentence long. While looking through this notebook, Tatsu saw an entry where he had stated, "Sadako vs. Kyako is interesting." Now, Sadako vs. Kyako is a Japanese comedy horror movie from 2016 that took Sadako, the ghost from The Ring, and Kyako, the ghost from The Grudge, and pitted them against each other, very much in the same vein as popular Western films like Freddy vs. Jason or Alien vs. Predator. But this movie is what gave Tatsu the idea of writing about yokai, as well as pitting monsters against monsters. At first, Tatsu thought about having the main character be a ghost like Sadako, but they wore an Iron Man suit. After thinking about how weird and alien that would look, that gave him another idea. What if aliens were present too? And thus we have Ghost vs. Aliens. Another idea Tatsu originally had was wearing a ghost. I guess instead of a ghost wearing an Iron Man suit, a human would wear a ghost like an Iron Man suit. This idea would be scrapped, but it inspired the ghost transformations that are so prevalent in the final product, like when Okarun activates his turbo granny powers. Tatsu also really liked the idea of drawing a shonen manga, or a boys manga, with a female main character, as that is something that is rare in the genre. In his words, "I wanted to draw a boys manga with a girl as the main character. I thought by having a girl as the main character, conflicts would change in many ways and patterns." And so came the main character, Momo Ayase. As I stated previously, Ayase is depicted as a fashionable young girl, specifically in the gal or gyaru sense of style. Gyaru is a fashion subculture in Japan using gaudy or racy clothes inspired by Western fashion. Dyed hair and a ton of makeup are also common staples in the subculture. The idea to make Ayase a gal was a decision made because Tatsu claimed he didn't know much about it, and he wanted to challenge himself by drawing something he wasn't too familiar with. So with the main idea of the story fleshed out, now let's ask what inspires the finer details of DanDaDan. Let's start with the obvious, the designs and behaviors of the ghost and aliens. When it comes to the antagonist of DanDaDan, whether it's the characters being drawn with an insane amount of line work and detail, or so ridiculous that it looks like it belongs in an 80s children's show, what you'll notice is how over the top and seemingly out of place they look in comparison to everything else. And this is done on purpose. In interviews, Tatsu has been very open about how media and other artists have inspired him, and how that inspiration has affected his work. One artist that Tatsu cites is none other than the world-renowned horror mangaka, Junji Ito. I sometimes refer to the works of Ito Junji. I think, why is this drawing so creepy? But on the other hand, there are scenes that made me laugh and say, isn't this a bit like a gag? I think scary and funny go hand in hand. Like many others, Tatsu credits Ito's incredible line work for much of the reason why his works look so creepy. However, seeing a bit of the humor and how ridiculous some of the scenes appear for the same reasons. This balance between the uncanny and the comical becomes the influence of a lot of Tatsu's own designs, particularly the ghosts. An adoration for old children's special effects dramas such as Silver Mask, Ultraman, and Spectraman is something that Tatsu is also cited to have an influence on his creative choices, finding that they have a unique handmade feel to them that provide a sense of ingenuity and craftsmanship. This handcrafted look would influence some of the designs as well as the flashiness of certain scenes. Particularly the work of Taru Narita, the character designer for the Ultraman series, was a heavy influence for Tatsu's alien designs. The unique, outlandish characters present in these shows were attractive to Tatsu, and he thought that emulating a similar feel would work perfectly for the aliens in his own story. If you've read or watched DanDaDan, then you've likely realized these are not the only influences older media has had on the series. One of the main characters is literally named after Ken Takakura, a prolific Japanese actor throughout the 70s and 80s. Other older properties and trends are also referenced, such as Galgo 13, Kick the Can, and Super Electromagnetic Robot Combattler V. Damn, that's a mouthful. Though Tatsu himself is not from this generation, he has expressed fondness for this era of media. I like the 1980s when people were still energetic. The social situation is bad these days, and it's dark and gloomy. I don't like it. I want people who read my manga to be energized, to laugh and enjoy themselves. This sentiment has done a lot to steer Tatsu's storytelling. For example, a common element in monster and ghost stories is that they are often inspired by tragic events. Especially with ghost and yokai tales, the creature or spirit is often originally a human, but through struggles or hardship, they end up becoming a monster. Tatsu makes it a point to balance these tragic tales with glimpses of hope. By showing the more human side of Momo and Okarun's adversaries, Tatsu likes to create the feeling that maybe the enemies themselves can be saved somehow. But another more light-hearted way this energized feeling is manifested is through another common staple in the story. Something you have probably noticed is that at the conclusion of every conflict, it is capped off with a scene of all the main characters involved sitting at a table and eating a feast at the end of the day. This is something Tatsu picked up from the work of Hayao Miyazaki, explaining, "In Miyazaki Hayao's works, people who have worked always eat. That's because they can't work anymore." Tatsu has expressed that he wants to end every scene by showing the readers hope. The meal scenes convey the message that people who work hard are rewarded. This is likely a view Tatsu has been carrying with him since before he even started working on DanDaDan. Remember, he spent years working himself extremely hard on many different projects. Despite getting tons of praise from those who worked closely with him, he would always get turned away by people higher up in the publications. This lack of recognition, or reward, nearly caused him to quit art entirely. Not wanting anyone else to feel that same sense of despair, Tatsu decided that he wanted to show his readers that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that you should keep working hard, no matter what. Shihei Lin's advice to draw freely without thinking turned out to be exactly what Tatsu needed, because after submitting DanDaDan, it would be the one to finally get accepted for serialization. The series made its debut on April 6th of 2021 on Shonen Jump Plus. Obviously, getting published in Shonen Jump is a gigantic feat that many mangaka aspire to. However, it is a position that comes with a humongous workload and a lot of competition. Just getting your foot in the door is only part of the battle. You also have to keep up with the grueling release schedule and maintain interest with the reader base. If a series doesn't perform at the publication's strict standards, it can easily get cancelled and replaced. Tatsu immediately felt this pressure. I have always had a vague sense of anxiety because all my past works have been rejected. When the first chapter was released, I was so nervous the day before I couldn't sleep. My hands got really cold. Thankfully for Tatsu, that early anxiety would be relieved. Upon release, DanDaDan immediately caught readers' attention for its unique quirkiness and blend of genres. Just a few months later, in June of 2021, DanDaDan got nominated for Next Manga Awards, an award for newer manga series, placing second out of 50 nominees in their digital release category, only being beaten by Kaiju number 8. Over the next few years, DanDaDan got high rankings and nominations for various other popularity polls and awards, as well as selling over 5 million physical copies. Of course, since the release of the first season of the anime, it has been exposed to a much wider audience. Though the first season was only 12 episodes long, and the second season is still on the horizon, it has properly captured fan interest just like the manga has. Already winning the Abema Anime Trends Award and currently being nominated for 19 different categories of the upcoming 2025 Crunchyroll Anime Awards, including Anime of the Year. When asked about the success of DanDaDan, Tatsu says that the responses far exceeded his expectations, and of course he feels very grateful for the support that he has been getting. His editor, Shihei Lin, has credited the fact that almost no one can predict where the show is going as the reason for its success, as well as its light-hearted, silly attitude throughout its plot lines. Tatsu has admitted that he still doesn't really understand what makes readers happy. However, he just draws what he likes, and if Shihei likes it, it's what he goes with. The friendship between Tatsu and Shihei actually plays a sizable role in influencing the sillier components of the story. When the two are together, they bounce ideas off each other while also joking around and having friendly conversation. If Tatsu is able to make Shihei laugh, he knows that that's a good idea and that he should probably include it. I want to continue to add new expressions, things that make people say, "I've never seen this before," or "that makes me laugh." DanDaDan is a story that unpredictably blends genres like aliens, ghosts, and rom-com, paired with the creator's genuine desire to make readers laugh and feel hope. With that, we have a blend that creates a uniqueness that we haven't seen in the shonen genre before now, and it's going to be interesting to see where the series ends up. But that's all I have for today. If you found Tatsu's story as interesting as I did, check out my references in the description of the video. Some of the interviews I used are only available in Japanese, but there's a lot of cool information that I didn't get to include. If you're caught up with DanDaDan and want something similar to watch or read, the series I mentioned earlier, The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, is one of my favorites. Definitely worth checking out. But other than that, like and subscribe if you enjoyed. See you next time.